Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram Sargastiti Pralaya Hetumachintya Shaktim Vishveshwaram Vidita Vishwamanantamurtim Nirmukta bandhanam apara sukhamburashim Shrivallabham vimala bodhaganam namami Yasya prasadadahameva vishnu Mayyeva sarvam parikalpitam cha Itham vijanami sadatmarupam Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. Okay, we'll read verses 35, 36, and 37. Jivatmana praveshascha niyantritvam chatan prati shruyate yasya vedeshu tadbrahmetyavadharaya karmanam phaladātritvam yasyaiva shruyate shrutau Jivanam hetu kartritvam tadbrahmetyavadharaya Tattvam padarthau nirnitau vakyarthāśchintyate dhuna Tadatmyamatra vakyarthah tayoreva padarthayoh. So what it's saying here now is last week we have completed the portion of Brahman as Ishvara. So we have completed the portion of Brahman as Ishvara that finishes in verse number 36. So in verse 35, we saw that it is that Brahman who enters in Jiva, Jivatmana Praveshascha. And that entry is nothing but the reflection of consciousness. Niyantritvam chatan prati, and being the controller. The controller meaning the controller of the laws of nature. This is that Brahman. Then in verse 36, we saw Brahman as Ishvara, who plays the role of karma phala data, the one who gives us the results of our actions. Means that consciousness expressing in totality, through which the results of our actions are delivered. Because we absolutely don't have any control over what will happen, what the result will be. Therefore, we bow down or surrender to Ishvara as the karma phala data. And it says also here, Jivanam hetu kartritvam. So the one who propels Jiva, but propels Jiva in the sense like the gas in the car, right? So it is through that consciousness alone that we are able to see, think, hear, smell, taste. But what we see, what we think, what we hear, smell, taste, that is up to the ego, right? But that ability, that power, that consciousness by which we see, hear, smell, taste, that is Paramatma. So know that to be Brahman. Know that consciousness, which manifests as Jiva, to be Brahman. Know that consciousness, which becomes the deliverer of the fruits of actions, to be Brahma. Know that consciousness, which enables us to see, hear, smell, taste, do, that is Brahma. Iti avadharaya. So in many ways, we have seen what tat is, right? So the way tat started was through the process of negation and assertion. So to analyze tat, we can use the language of negation, saying it's not this, it's not that, it's not this, it's not that. Or we can use the language of assertion, saying it is Sat Chit Ananda. Both of this belong to the realm of Swarupa Lakshana, indicating tat in its real nature. And then there were some verses that indicated tat as Ishvara, as Tatastha Lakshana, as its incidental nature. Then in verse number 37, what was said is, now that we've seen what tvam, what you means, and what tat means, what God means, now let's understand the sentence meaning. Let's understand the vakyartha. So we've seen the padartha, the meaning of each word. Now we will understand the vakyartha, or the sentence. So now that's where we are at. Okay, so from here onwards, what's going to be explained is the sentence meaning, or we can also say asi. So, you know, there are three words. Tat, tvam, asi. That means that. Tvam means you. Asi means are. You are that. So we're going to explain what are means. And are really means the oneness between that and you. So we can say we are talking about the word are, or we're talking about the entire sentence, because the entire sentence means oneness. So in verse 38 now, we're going to come to 3 ways to analyze the sentence. So let's read that. Saṁsargo va viśiṣṭo va. Saṁsargo va viśiṣṭo va. Vakyartho natra sammataha. Vakyartho natra sammataha. Akhaṇḍa-eka-rasatvena. Akhaṇḍa-eka-rasatvena. Vakyartho viduṣāmataha. Vakyartho viduṣāmataha. Saṁsargo va viśiṣṭo va. Vakyartho natra sammataha. Akhaṇḍa-eka-rasatvena. Vakyartho viduṣāmataha. Now, those who have your video off, if you just came, please make sure it's on. Saṁsargaḥ. Saṁsargaḥ here means through association. Association, or viśiṣṭaḥ, or qualified by something. Vakyartaha. Vakya, the sentence. Artaha, the meaning of the sentence. Na, it's not. Sammataha, it is not to be accepted. Where? Atra, here. Here, in tattvamasi, samsarga, association, or viśiṣṭaḥ, which is qualification, being qualified by something, this is not to be accepted. What is to be accepted? Akhaṇḍa-eka-rasatvena means this unbroken, homogeneous essence. Akhaṇḍa. Akhaṇḍa literally means unbroken. Eka-rasa. Eka-rasa means homogeneous. So this one homogeneous essence, vakyartaha, in the sentence, vidusha mataha, is to be accepted according to the wise. So in Tattvamasi, there can be 3 different ways to interpret it. So the first is called saṁsargaḥ. Saṁsargaḥ means that in a sentence, when there are words which is associated with a noun, what we do is try to figure out how they are related. How are those words related when there is a noun and there's a verb? So for example, we have this verb, action verb, eating. Now all sentences have to have an action verb, eating. So who is eating? Let us say Rama is eating. What is he eating? He's eating food. How is he eating? With his hands, let us say. So here, what is being understood in this sentence is that there's an association of the words with the verb. So Rama is eating food with his hands. So the main subject is Rama, and everything is kind of associated with the fact of Rama's eating. So what some people do with this tat, tvam, asi is there are 3 separate words. Tat, tvam, and asi. They're 3 separate words. But in Sanskritam, there's something called a compound word or samasa. And when there's a compound word, what it is, it's one word, you put everything together in one word, and there are different ways to interpret it. So some people put tat, tvam together as one word. And when you interpret it, so these are some interpretations that they come up with the word. So if you put this word together, some will say, tat iva tvam asi. So that compound could mean that you are like that. Tat iva tvam asi. You are like him. You are like God. So in that compound, they're creating an association. Or tena tvam asi. You are with God. Or tasmai tvam asi. You are for God. Means you offer everything to God. Tasma tvam asi. You are from God. Tasya tvam asi. You are God's and God is yours. Tasmin tvam asi. You are in God. He is in you. And so this is some interpretations that people can make based on trying to associate all the words together. So interpreting it as a compound word and then trying to associate words together. And what happens is when we interpret this great statement or mahāvākya this way, then we're not coming to non-duality. We're coming to duality, associations or relationships with God. We are in God, with God, for God, like God. So a lot of relationships, different bhavas, which is fine in the realm of devotion and everything, that is fine. But remember, Advaita wants to come to non-duality. So this is not the way to interpret that Tattvamasi. It's not through any association of some sort. The next possible way is viśiṣṭaḥ. Viśiṣṭaḥ means that maybe one is qualifying the other. So for example, if we have this, this blue lotus, right? Let us say blue lotus. So what does it mean? It means that the lotus has to be blue and the blue has to be a lotus, right? So it is like qualifying, right? So here it could mean that another example is, let us say, Rama is handsome, he is fair, or he is dark, or he is tall, or he is wise. So Rama, they're all the same case, like in Sanskrit, the same case. Rama is tall, he's wise, he's handsome. These are all adjectives describing Rama. But we all know that this ultimate Brahman is beyond words, beyond thoughts, is beyond any qualifications. So you cannot describe Brahman. There's just no way that we can qualify Brahman, right? So it is not that Tat is describing Tvam, or it is not that Tvam is describing Tat. They're not describing each other because there's no description in Brahman. Brahman has no quality. One is not qualifying the other. So it is not viśiṣṭaḥ. So it's not, this sentence is not to be interpreted through any association or through any qualification. And when this happens, then what do you do? How do you make that sentence to represent or resemble oneness? How do you say tat tvam asi, you are that? How do you say that that means oneness? So the trick is to give them completely opposing attributes and then dropping those opposing attributes and equating them. So another example other than tattvamasi is soyam Devadatta. That Devadatta is the name of a person. That Devadatta is this Devadatta, right? So there's one person, his name is Devadatta. And in this sentence, I'm saying that Devadatta is this Devadatta. So maybe I knew him before when he was a kid, and he was still a child. He was so tiny, he was so thin and so cute, so charming, and just a student, and in another time and in another place. And now that I'm seeing him as now, so tall and grown, and he has a career, and he's in a different time, and he's in a different place. And so how do I equate the two? There are two opposing attributes, which is the time, the place, the physique, the career, etc. I remove all of those opposing attributes, and then I come to one Devadatta, right? So it's not that I'm one is the adjective of the other. No, it's not that one is associated with the other. Both are one and the same thing. I'm just negating all the opposing characteristics, and I come to this one Devadatta. So in the same way, tattvamasi, the way it's to be understood is akhaṇḍa-eka-rasatvena, through one homogeneous method. Meaning, for tat or that and tvam, which is you, they are actually one. They're one and the same. There's no relationship. A relationship can only happen if there are two. There's no relationship whatsoever. It's just one and the same, and we negate the opposing attributes, and we come to akhaṇḍa, unbroken, one homogeneous essence. This is how to interpret it. So then the question becomes, well, what happens when we interpret it this way? What happens when we understand this great statement in this way? Then he says now in verse 39, Pratyakbodhoya abhati, Pratyakbodhoya abhati, Sodvayanandalakshanaha, Sodvayanandalakshanaha, Advayanandarupascha, Advayanandarupascha, Pratyakbodhaika-lakshanaha, Pratyakbodhaika-lakshanaha, Pratyakbodhoya abhati, Sodvayanandalakshanaha, Advayanandarupascha, Pratyakbodhaika-lakshanaha. So this is a very, very beautiful verse. Now what he's saying is Pratyak Bodha. Bodha means consciousness. Pratyak, that inner consciousness, ya abhati, which appears in our consciousness, meaning sakshi, that witness consciousness, which appears. Saha advayananda lakshana. That alone is the non-dual bliss. That alone is the infinite bliss. Advaya means non-dual. Ananda, bliss. That alone is the non-dual bliss. And advayananda rupascha. And that which is of the nature, rupa here means nature, that which is of the nature of non-dual bliss, pratyakbodhaika-lakshana. That is the very witness self, the inner self. So when we equate the two, just like that Devadatta is this Devadatta, you remove all of those attributes and you equate the two. The same way that tvamasi, when we equate the two and we remove all the opposing attributes, then we come to this oneness. And this oneness is two-way oneness. It's A equals B and B equals A, right? So very often people will just say, I am that, but also that I am. That should be known. That's why in this text or this Upanishad called Kaivalya Upanishad, it says tat tvam eva tat, means that you are that. So it is like when we tie something, when you tie something one knot, it's weak. So you have to tie it both ways and then it's strong. It will not come out. So in this way, we have to know or understand or recognize that we are that and that is also us. There's one beautiful couplet that Kabir Das Ji wrote, and in it he says that I was searching and I lost myself and the drop merged into the ocean. Then later, after many, many years, he looked at it again and he said, no. It's not that the drop merged into the ocean merged into the drop. So it's very, very beautiful. It's not that the drop merged into the ocean, because when the drop merged into the ocean, we have this idea, right, that I am this little individual self. I am merging into the supreme and I become one with the self. We have this little idea, but it's not like that at all. It's like that whole infinity just takes over. That whole infinity just takes over, and that infinity alone is. It's not us going anywhere, right? And so this is now what he's going to explain in the next two verses. He's saying that when you do this double bound formula, this is what should happen. And this is what is called knowledge, actually. So in verse number 40 now, Itham anyonyatadatmya, Itham anyonyatadatmya, Pratipatteryada bhavet, Pratipatteryada bhavet, Abrahmatvam tvamarthasya, Abrahmatvam tvamarthasya, Vyavarteta tadaiva hi, Vyavarteta tadaiva hi, Itham anyonyatadatmya, Pratipatteryada bhavet, Abrahmatvam tvamarthasya, Vyavarteta tadaiva hi. So he says, Itham, in this way, anyonya tadatmya. pratipattihi. Pratipattihi means when there is a comprehension of what? Tadatmya, of the oneness, anyonya of both. So the comprehension of the oneness of that with you and you with that, when there's a mutual identity, comprehension of mutual identity, yada bhavet, when that happens, abrahmatvam vyavarteta, that notion of not being Brahman, vyavarteta, it will end. Where tvamartasya, in the meaning of thou, it will end. When will it end? Tada evai means immediately it will end. So when, as explained above, the mutual identity between the two words, thou and that, is comprehended, then the idea I am not Brahman, entertained by thou, shall immediately end. So what is this abrahmatvam? Brahma means finitude, infinitude. Brahma means infinitude. Abrahmatvam means the sense of finitude. So we have this sense that one sense we have is we are limited by the body, mind, and intellect. We are limited by this body, mind, intellect. And along with this, we take identifications. We identify that the body is short, tall, fat, thin. All these limitations are there. Limitations of the mind, of the emotions, limitations of the intellect. So all these limitations will end because this is not me, right? Then what other limitation will end? This limitation of I am a doer or enjoyer. I am a doer, enjoyer. I am this ego. This limitation will end. I am this personality. I am this Shubhani. I am this individual. That will also end. That limitation will end. What other limitation will end? I am Sakshi. I am the witness consciousness. That will also end. Because that's also a limitation. To say that I am just this witness consciousness of all of these thoughts and emotions, that is still very limiting because I'm only the witness of these thoughts. I'm only the witness of this body. I'm only the witness of this life. That will also end. So all these limitations in all of these areas of our lives, that will go vyavarteta at that time itself. At that time itself. So then from the from the practical standpoint, one would ask, well, how does one lead their life then? How does one lead their life? See, when we understand that we are beyond this body, mind, intellect, beyond even this ego, beyond even this witness consciousness, life is lived with a spirit of great surrender. Because we understand that whatever will have to happen with the body, mind, intellect, it will have to happen. And based on our past actions, past thoughts, etc., it will have to go, it will have to happen. And why interfere with it unnecessarily? There is this cosmic intelligence, which has a cosmic canvas, which has so many colors, so many different hues, so many different types of brushes and strokes. And there's so many ways in which our life can turn out to be. Just let it play out. Just let it play out. Because that's all we have to do. When one realizes that they're beyond this body, mind, intellect, ego, even beyond that witness, that that sense of wanting to control, to demand, to insist, that goes. that goes away. There's just a sense of surrender. And that surrender doesn't mean that we don't do anything. People get the wrong idea that I surrender and I'm not doing anything. No, surrender means that there's a will to accept whatever the divine plan is and play that role accordingly. Whatever role we have to play, it will be revealed. It will come. We don't have to go looking for it. We don't have to go create a role. We don't have to find anything. Everything will just come. So when this great statement, this great mahāvākya is understood, then this is what happens with tvam. That abrahmatvam, that sense of limitation, that sense of finitude, that goes away. That goes away. Right? What happens with tat? So we will see now. Next verse. Tadarthasya paroksham yada. Tadarthasya paroksham yada. Evam kim tata shrunu. Evam kim tata shrunu. Purnanandeka-rupena. Purnanandeka-rupena. Pratyagboධोऽवतिष्ठते. Pratyagboධोऽवतिष्ठते. Tadarthasya paroksham yad. Evam kim tata shrunu. Purnanandeka-rupena. Pratyagboධोऽवतिष्ठate. So what happens then to the meaning of tat? So we have seen in the meaning of tvam, what is supposed to go away? The sense of finitude. Tad arthasya, in the meaning of tat or that, parokshyam, that sense of being remote, that sense of being remote. Yadi evam kim tata shunu. So because we think that tat or that means remoteness, means being remote. So if it is said, then listen. Purna ananda eka-rupena, that full one mass of bliss, pratyagboධः, witnessing consciousness, avatishtate, it remains. So if, as said, the depth meaning of the term that is mass of bliss without a second, and thou is the witnessing consciousness, then what? Listen, the inner self, consciousness that illumines all thoughts, remains as the all-full one mass of bliss without a second. So what does this mean? So in the word tat, what happens when we really understand the mahāvākya? Paroksham, the sense of remoteness goes. Right now, we feel like Brahman is far away. Brahman is something to be attained. At some point in time, I will become Brahman. In some space or in some place, I will become Brahman. Or I have to be this other thing than I am. So there's this sense of remoteness, sense of like this Brahman is just too big for me. I'm not getting it. That gets removed. Because we have studied also before that Jiva cannot become Brahman. That Jiva is Brahman. Moksha is not something that we can attain. Because if we were to attain moksha, if we were actually to do so many things, so some people believe that attaining moksha is we do a lot of actions, get a lot of punya, a lot of merit, and then we attain this thing called liberation. If liberation is something that is attained, then liberation could also be lost. could also be lost, because remember, if anything is based on action, action is based on effort. So as long as our effort is there, that much our action will be there, and that much we will get the result. And the minute we stop, we will lose it. So if this liberation or this freedom is something to be attained, then we will lose it. So it is not that. And also, the finite can never become infinite, right? Some people feel also that this body will somehow become infinite. This mind will somehow become infinite, and this ego will somehow become infinite. And this is liberation. No, the finite will never become infinite. What is liberation is realizing that we are not this finitude, that we are the infinite Brahman underlying it. So this paroksha, this remoteness aspect, it gets removed. Then what happens? Yadi evam. So if this happens, if we remove this abrahmatvam, finitude from tvam, and if we remove parokshatvam, that remoteness from Brahman, yadi evam, if that happens, kim, what then? Kim tataha, what then? Shunu. Now you listen. What remains is purna ananda eka rupena pratyak bodho avatishte. What remains is this whole. Purna means whole. Ananda, bliss, and pratyak bodha, consciousness, that alone remains. Satchit ananda alone remains. Purna here means sat, infinite existence. Ananda means ananda, infinite bliss. And pratyak bodha means consciousness. That's all it is, right? Now, when we study this, one part is understanding what we're supposed to do, understanding this statement, how it's supposed to make sense. How do we equate the two? But the other part of it is internalizing it. Because many of us will still get stuck on, I am the witness consciousness. Many of us can reach this point. I am the witness of my thoughts. I'm the witness of my body, intellect, etc. And then we feel like we have to experience Brahman. So remember, Brahman can never, ever be experienced as something else. Because the minute I experience Brahman as something other than me, then that's not Brahman. It's limited. And when I experience Brahman as something other than me, anything that is experienced, it comes and goes in time. So I can only experience Brahman as me. I can only realize it as me. So when the mind is quiet, when everything is away, and when we have the chance to just sit with it and let the mind quiet down, all that remains is I. That I, which is free from the cosmic world, cosmic creation, sustenance, dissolution, that I, which is not just disassociated with the body, mind, and intellect, but that I, which is free of that cosmic creation, sustenance, dissolution, that I is Brahman. That's clearly recognized as Brahman. So that is here, that is now, that is who we are. That's the same as understanding, recognizing the room space to be total space. It is actually space. It is actually space and space alone. So that after knowing this, understanding this in this way, it's important to go through the study, to go through the system. But the second part is not experience per se. The second part is an internalization, a deep internalization, a deep subjective understanding. Then everything makes sense, means everything, it just settles. So a big part of Vedanta is digestion. See, nowadays everybody is in a rush and we don't give things time for anything to digest because we move from one thing to the other. I have this appointment, I have that appointment, I have to go there. And we don't let things linger and digest and think over it and just go through our system. So what happens is it just comes and goes. So that's the same with knowledge. When we just do this and then we move into the next thing and then we move into the next thing, it just comes and goes. So like food has to be digested, like work also has to be digested, the same way this knowledge also has to be digested, has to cook. It has to go through the entire system. And only when it cooks, it goes through the entire system, then it can truly provide nutrients to the body with which we can live a deeper life. So that's what has to be done. Now, what else is there to explain, right? He explained that tvam asi, and he explained that asi means oneness. Asi means oneness, and oneness both ways. I am that is me. What a very beautiful thing. Huh? I am that is me. That's what asi means. And he explained that when we understand this, then our sense of finitude is gone. And the sense of being away from Brahman, remote from Brahman, different from Brahman, that is gone. So now what is left? He's going to now get into this topic of what is the procedure, the actual procedure of coming to this oneness. So we'll read this verse and then we'll see a little bit of it. Verse number 42. Tatvamasyadivakyam cha Tatvamasyadivakyam cha Tadatmya pratipadane Lakshyo tatvam padarthau dvau Lakshyo tatvam padarthau dvau Upadaya pravartate Tatvamasyadivakyam cha Tadatmya pratipadane Lakshyo tatvam padarthau dvau Upadaya pravartate. So he says, Tatvamasyadivakyam. Statements like that thou art. Statements like Tatvamasi cha Tadatmya pratipadane. So in the pratipadana means in the establishment of the identity, what happens? Lakshyo. So one has to take the indicative or implied meaning. Tatvam padartho. In tat and tvam, in both those words, the meaning of both those words, one is to take the indicative meaning. Dvau means two. Upadaya pravartate. So bringing this implied meaning is what we need to do. So great statements like that thou art establish the identity of what is meant by the two terms thou and that in the deeper indicative meaning. So why are we going to this deeper indicative meaning? So there are two meanings. that two levels of the meaning. One is called Vāchyārtha. Vāchyārtha means literally the literal meaning. Vāchyārtha, the literal meaning. And Lakshyārtha means the implied meaning. So when it comes to Tat Tvam Asi, if we literally take it, it says, you are God. Literally, we literally take it, you are God. Now, that is so contradictory to what we see. So contradictory, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense because how can I be God? I have limited knowledge, I have limited strength, I'm, so finite. And God is all knowing, all strong, all powerful. So you are God, that doesn't make sense in the literal meaning. So why not just discard the sentence? Why not just say, this doesn't make sense? I'm not going to deal with it. Because this is given in our Shastra. It's given in our Vedas, in our Upanishads. So one reason is we can't just discard it. And this verse also will come in a few verses. They'll explain that. We can't just discard it because it comes in our Upanishads. And it doesn't come in our Upanishad one time. But if it came in our Upanishad just one time, somewhere random, we could be like, okay. But it comes in Chandogya Upanishad, we saw 9 times. It comes 9 times, right? And each Upanishad has a mahāvākya, has a great statement, and that's why it's an Upanishad. Second thing is, our great realized masters attest to this truth. They attest to this truth. So because there is so much authoritativeness to it, we cannot just decry or let go or leave the literal meaning. So what it's saying here is now we have to take a deeper dive. We have to take the lakshya, that we have to go into the implied meaning. It's like if somebody says, the wave is the ocean. Wave is the ocean. And then that is somebody of authority, somebody of respect. And not only once, but probably in many places, they said the wave is the ocean. So now what do we have to do? We have to go and scientifically understand how is the wave the ocean, right? We have to go into the essence of the wave, the essence of the ocean. Then we understand, oh, it's just water. So in the same way, Tat Tvam Asi, we have to take that deeper dive. So what's going to happen in the next series of verses is taking that deeper dive and actually understanding the process of how we are letting go of the opposing attributes of Tat and Tvam and keeping their essence. So we're going to do a little bit of a analysis in the next few verses, right? So that we will take up the next class. Yeah. So just to summarize what we've done today, is try to understand how to interpret or analyze the great statement Tat Tvam Asi. And in this analysis, it's important to understand that it is not just a one-way thing. It's not just that you are that. It's also that is you. That is you. And when we understand it so tightly in both ways, then what happens is the sense of finitude, sense of limitation, sense of smallness, that gets completely removed from I, from you, and that sense of remoteness, sense of otherness, sense of being something to be attained, that gets completely removed from Brahman. And we alone remain as we are. And this statement is to be understood in the implied sense, because the literal sense is contradictory. And we have to take a deeper dive because it is in our scriptures, and it is also the live live anubhava, or what we can say the live realization, are great masters. And if we also want to come to this realization, the way to do it is not to just understand the words, but to internalize them and go beyond that which is beyond words. Go to that which is beyond words. All right. So we'll stop here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.